Hi everyone. So I wanted to make this video real quick. What it's like for me symptom-wise with having episodic ataxia type 2. And the reason why I wanted to make this video is because I've ran into this issue where I would Google things online because I was experiencing unusual symptoms. And the information online with episodic ataxia type 2 would be very, very limited. So there is not a lot of information. There was things I experienced there was not a lot of information about that I experienced with episodic ataxia type 2. And online it just focused on, well, the individual experiences these sporadic severe incoordination imbalance, and basically that's it. It's not like that at all. So I wanted to jump on here, kind of get more in depth about what it's like for me and what I had experienced and what's going on. So, as of March this year of 2021, I finally received my genetic test results. I have a gene mutation within the gene CACNA1A or CACNA1A for episodic ataxia type 2. Okay. So, with my experience, symptom-wise, is that the way I experience it is the very first thing I experienced was dizziness, vertigo, and then I eventually became sick from it. That's when it first started. But when it started as dizziness and vertigo. Very little ataxia when I first started getting the symptoms. Dizziness and vertigo was the first symptom, basically. Another thing was one of my first, and could go along with CACNA1A mutations, is intellectual disability, global developmental delays. I was late at reaching my developmental milestones. So those were like the first signs of CACNA1A that I had it. And no one really knew too much about it back then. So, basically the ataxia came on later. My vertigo became more debilitating, and I started to become more ataxic. So I was starting to become unsteady and imbalanced, and that's when I started to use a wheelchair during episodes only, to transport me from being in school onto the bus. The nurse would get me a wheelchair and transport me to the bus. And my mother drove bus at the time, so it really was convenient at the time. But, so that's when that took place. And then, I became to the point, I declined, it became to the point I was using a walker and a wheelchair every time I went out. Even not being in an episode. So I'm going to get into this more details. So dizziness, vertigo, the first signs, vomiting, sickness from episodic ataxia type 2. It's like a motion sickness because you're constantly spinning. And progression, finding out I had cerebellar atrophy, which is the cerebellum in the back of my brain. The cerebellum is responsible for coordination and balance. So, last year I just found out I had that, but I had it for years. I've had it at least since I was 14, that is known, but it could have been longer, could have not been, I don't know. But, so, cerebellar atrophy, that can progress. So, in between my episodes, I noticed my gait was a little bit more off over time. So I have a little bit of a wider stance than I used to. Went from having a perfectly normal gait to a wider stance, and kind of like a funnier way of walking. If you pay attention, you may notice, but if you don't pay attention, you may think I'm totally fine. So, um, periods of imbalance, even when I'm not dizzy or in an episode. So I have that. I have, believe it or not, I have neuropathy. Okay. So I have neuropathy. I would get numbness in my hands, tingling in my feet, and whatnot. And I have generalized weakness. So even without being in an episode or an attack of my ataxia, I noticed that I would experience numbness, tingling in different areas of my body and like a prickling sensation. And I would have a generalized weakness even when I'm not in an episode. So that's another big problem that I have had challenges with. I knew I once before experienced it only during an episode, and I have jerks and tremors. So let me switch. And I have Daisy Vogue nystagmus, which is like the jerky eye movements as well. So I have that that comes along with episodic ataxia type 2, which is often talked about. But I have a jerking arm if I do this, like movements. It just, my arm jerks. It's like an action tremor as well. And I have that even when I'm not in an episode. So I've slowly got these permanent side effects of this condition when they used to happen in episodes only. Like the tremors used to be in an episode, in, whatever. But now I've noticed it's become, even when I'm not in an episode. And the dizziness, the vertigo, and the vomiting is what I would consider an episode. It's really weird, but as you get older with episodic ataxia type 2, people often say there's this sudden decline where you have a progression of more symptoms and the episodic symptoms become less prominent. So it's kind of like it goes one way, it seems, and then it goes the other way. So, so with the weakness and whatever, I've had trouble walking even when I'm not in an episode. So I managed to walk around the house okay, but when I went out, I had to use a walker or a wheelchair. It kind of like depends. But now I've been doing pretty well since I started that new medication. I haven't really needed to use those other devices because of the new medication they have me on, which is wondrous. That is very good. And I'm very fortunate to have that because it's only FDA approved for multiple sclerosis and it's used as an off-label for ataxia, and many insurances do not cover it, this specific drug. So I was very fortunate to kind of like have access to it, and it has helped me out a lot. So those are some things about episodic ataxia type 2 that I have that many people might not know about. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon. Bye now.